Well, it's a huge privilege to be here. I guess it was May in 2005 when I first started doing training, the first coaching training class with Mike Colley, and Conrad was there, Tim Goff was there, other people that are old like me now. Oh my gosh, that's right. Good to see you. Yep. Myra's here. Give it up for Myra, shall we? She's a long-standing employee. Well, so I get to talk about burnout this morning, now afternoon, which is a tricky topic, but I'm guessing, let me just ask you if you would raise your hand, and I'd encourage you to lean towards more likely than less likely here, but how many of you have either experienced burnout or been close to it? Yeah, pretty much all of you. If you love Jesus, you got to get close to burnout, right? And how many people think that folks in positions like Tim's or Alan's or Frank's, do you think they ever grapple with burnout? Do you think that's a challenge for them? Pretty much. Well, burnout's a big deal. First, I want to, though, take a look at what is burnout. So we're here to beat it, as a matter of fact. So what's burnout? What's the definition? Well, I would say burnout, and this is more of an academic definition initially, burnout is generally understood as an emotional collapse or breakdown that sometimes comes as the result of chronic stress in the context of one's job-related roles and responsibilities. So burnout starts from working too much. And if you love Jesus and if you have a demanding position, you're going to be struggling with that at some level. And I wanted to come up with more of an informal definition, so a couple of days ago I penned this. It's feeling like you are constantly at the point of exhaustion as passion and purpose slowly drain out of your soul, and as your most important relationships drift towards greater dysfunction. Isn't that nice, make you feel really good inside? But that's like a painful truth, right? It's like, oh my gosh, this is happening to me. How can this be happening to me? And I want to make this more real, and like for the other speakers, the PowerPoint will be available, so it'll get emailed to you. Jasmine or Renee will take care of that. But to make this more real, I want to share a couple illustrations where I'm protecting people's identities by keeping things somewhat ambiguous, but these are real-life people. They both happen to be Adventists. The first one I'll talk about, she's an African-American female, works in the world of education. And I was talking with her a couple weeks ago, and I'll be quoting her. It's like the number of people that I've been talking to about burnout the last few weeks, it's like been providential, how much it's come up. And it's also perhaps indicative or diagnostic of how widespread it is. But she said, I'm living close to the point of exhaustion almost all of the time. The demands are always so great. I push myself to do more than I should, and I'm constantly wanting to be in the field. And when people share about their hurts, I wonder, what did I do wrong? I'm not expecting it to be easy. I'm truly loving what I'm doing, and I'm with people I respect. But for her, burnout means you can't pour from an empty cup. And then the cup gets cracked and dusty. She said this. It's so hard to keep pouring when I'm so empty. I continue to pour even when I have less and less capacity. And imagining you just feel sad for her, right? It's like, you poor thing. That sounds awful. Let me tell you a bit about her backstory, because I'm a psychologist and so I care about backstory. Just to warn you, we're going to be going there, so be praying for that moment, right, when it's your turn to reflect. But in her case, her mom was very sick when she was young. And she had to step into her mom's role with her siblings. But then her mom got well when she was like 11 or 12. But then the craziest thing is her mom gave more and more to people outside the family. It's like, wait a second, you've not been given to the kids for a long time, and now you're healthy, but you're going the wrong way, right? So our leader here was parentified. That's the fancy term for when you get thrust into a parent role as a kid. And for her, it's like, because she didn't receive, she tends to only find her value through giving. Giving is her default. And because, again, she wasn't valued by her mom, and I'm guessing dad was absent, it's a lot harder to learn how to value yourself when you've not been valued. It's one of those paradoxes that just seems profoundly true. And so for her, over time, it's like, how can she not burn out when she feels so much responsibility for other people and the demands are so great. Another fellow I work with, a male Adventist leader, grew up in another part of the world, Southern Hemisphere. He's in his mid-40s. I've been working with him for about 4 years. He struggles deeply with setting limits, with being assertive in healthy ways, with overextending and taking good care of himself. Physically, when he says no, he feels guilty. Some of you might be able to relate to our dear friend. But I would argue the bulk of his struggles come from his dad's massive struggles with overextending. So talk about his dad for a bit. His dad was in full-time ministry as a pastor and professor. His dad had his first heart attack when he was in his 40s. And as the client describes his father, it's like his dad didn't go to the hospital. He just toughed it out. It's not that big of a deal. I'll just keep going. But he had 5 heart attacks between 40 and his mid-70s. And by the time he had his 5th one, his second one happened when he was 52, but in his mid-70s when he died from the last one. But the last 5 years, he was so compromised by his heart problems that he couldn't really walk around the block because he was so overwhelmed with physical struggles. So per the son, he didn't take care of his health, which you can kind of gather. He worked too hard. He did not lead a balanced life. And he said yes to everything that was asked of them, unless it was his family, which makes your heart sad, I would imagine. Dad, can we play? Nope, I got to help people. Got to help people. He worked about 70 hours a week and didn't really stop working. He didn't have any deep friendships per the client. And not surprisingly, his mom resented Dad for how much time he spent investing in other people and not helping her with the kids or being a husband to her. So as the son is reflecting on his dad, he appreciates how much his dad gave to the ministry. He doesn't hold that against him. But as he's growing through our work, he's realizing more deeply how his dad's overcommitment and overextension and the lack of time his dad invested in his own growth and in his wife and his family have left him really stunted in his own quest for growing in wholeness and meaningful contribution. In other words, the sins of the father. And that's part of what's so insidious about overextension. I'm loving the Lord. I'm serving Jesus. Well, but there's certain things that you can't give to other people. There's certain things you have to do. Andy Stanley's pretty well known for saying something to the effect of, it's my kids only have one dad and my wife only has one husband. Those can't get changed out. There's only certain things that I can do. And so when his dad chronically neglected that, not only did he suffer dramatically, my client and his siblings, their lives would reflect as well the massive deficits and dysfunction that he's unwittingly handed to them. So it's not too hard to say that I don't believe that this is what God had in mind for these two people. It wasn't his dream, man, I hope you can grow up and the only way you can find life is through giving, or that I just hope that you obsessively give yourself to the gospel and completely ignore your wife and your kids. That's, I don't think, reflecting the heart of God. I really don't think it is. So I'm guessing as you're hearing these stories, you feel compassion, you feel concern, and then perhaps it's about, my goodness, how do I get out of the trap I might be in? How do I make some course corrections so that their stories, which God is at work in and working on, but how does my story move a different direction? So, the first question we have to ask is, how does burnout happen? Well, simply put, burnout happens when we chronically overestimate our limited capacity and underestimate the vastness of the need. We chronically overestimate our capacity and chronically underestimate the vastness of the need. So why do we repeatedly do this? Well, it's complex and there's many factors, but ultimately we can gain a victory if we can learn how to fight this fight more skillfully. So let's go deeper into why does burnout happen? Well, first thing I want to say is that it's a beautiful thing to give your best to the Lord. I'm not arguing that at all. It's a beautiful thing to serve in meaningful ways. That's not the question here. But it's when we go too far And I think the first thing, just to acknowledge it, would be cultural expectations. Growing up with idealized versions of sacrifice and service. And so, valor and honor is extended to those who work hard and give sacrificially. And, to talk about maybe the elephant in the room, right? It's certainly a beautiful and in some ways dangerous part of the Adventist heritage. So we think about James White, the husband of Ellen. He had multiple strokes at an older age, likely due to chronic overextension. That's a part of the DNA in the Adventist church. Let's be hard workers. We don't want anyone to question that. And that can have, ramifications, right? I think another piece that's germane here is that we've unwittingly adopted short-sighted and at some level, this might be provocative, self-reliant ministry paradigms. And so what I mean by that is these are ministry paradigms that essentially neglect the extraordinary importance of nurturing deeper relationships, whether that's friendships if you're single, or your marriage, or your relationship with your kids, and our relationship with our body in terms of our body, mind, and soul, which is, again, the essence of self-care. So somehow we naively tend to think that if we just give more, somehow we can solve all the problems and please all the people. Now, when you say that out loud, it's like, well, surely I don't believe that. But what does our life say? What does your life say? How much would your life say you believe that? I'm guessing if you're like most of us, you've noticed that tendency in yourself. And sadly, brutally, experience never bears it out. We can never get it all done, and we can never please everybody. I mean, you think about America, we've got Republicans and Democrats. And it's like, if you win a presidential election, even by 7 million votes, 67 million people didn't vote for you. It doesn't matter which side of the political aisle you're on. You just can't please everybody. It's just the truth. But we can fall, I would say, almost unconsciously into the idea that we are God, that we don't really have limits, and somehow we can fix way more than we actually can. That's where it's like when Satan said, "You shall be like God," he wasn't kidding. You'll think you don't have limits, and I'm going to mess with you so bad because of that, right? And so the desire to please others runs really deep in most of us, and certainly in my story. Growing up with a mom that was depressed, I got parentified probably in 5th grade or so. My mom lost her firstborn son. He stopped gaining weight at about 7 months and slowly faded away for the next 4 or 5 months. And so she, I would say, never recovered from that loss. And so she had 3 miscarriages before I was born. And so it's truthful to say that I was born into a mix of joy, but also more so fear and sadness. Because, we don't know if the same thing's going to happen to him. And so I found out through my aunt from my wife that my mom waited a year to attach to me. Because she wanted to make sure I was going to live. But it's that left a deep mark in me around, I'm figuring this out, I'm just turned 60 recently, but I'm learning through the Lord, through time and prayer and through therapy, historically, that neglect I interpreted I must be bad. There must be something wrong with me since she's not attaching to me. I couldn't know as a 6-month-old, well, this is really because she's afraid that you're going to die like your brother died. So this is totally not about you. It's no, for me, it's I've been trying to earn my worth because of that nagging sense of shame, you're bad, so you have to work hard to earn it. And so I'll talk more about that as it pertains to most folks in terms of people that went into seminary. But I'm just giving you a little backstory, so why is working hard so tempting? Because I'm trying to earn my worth. And it's shocking, surprising to think, well, you mean that came from something before you could even talk? It's yeah, pretty much. That's how we're wired. And so this leads me to the biggest reason that I think most of us struggle with beating burnout. It's a lack of sense of self due to neglect or trauma or abuse, where our self-definition is unconsciously built around a low sense of worth and corresponding shame, where we relentlessly work to find our value through pleasing others. And just to give this a bit more credibility, they've been doing some research the last few years, particularly regarding clergy. Why do they go into the ministry? And studies have pointed out that a substantial number of pastors and Christian leaders come from backgrounds of neglect and disorder, such that they end up being parentified like I was, and like the woman I referenced earlier, where they find their sense of identity and purpose by over-functioning, by taking care of others substantially more than they take care of themselves, because that's kind of what they had to do. That's what they were conditioned to do. And so it's a sobering truth that I invite you to think and pray about. Like, what was life like for me growing up? And I was talking with a client yesterday where it's like, for someone that grew up with that neglect, where they find their identity through giving, it's like, you mean I can do that full time? I can be a pastor where that's all I do is give? That sounds perfect for me. And it was kind of tongue in cheek, but it's like, there's something sobering about that. It's like, well, if that's real, then I probably have to take extra steps to counter that. And I think the next reason is that we do not fully realize the depth or intensity of the spiritual battle that we're in. Our battle is not against flesh and blood, and Satan is known as the father of lies, and he especially loves to lie to us about our worth and value, because the more that he can get us to think we have to earn it, like that's the hook, like he's got you. Because if you can't rest in the Father's lap for your sense of worth, like you will habitually, unconsciously, like reflexively default to giving because you're trying to earn something you could never really earn. So that's not like a funny topic, right? That's kind of painful and sobering, but it's I think just so important to tell the truth about how remarkably persuasive Satan can be at getting us to believe lies that we just had no idea were there, especially when he can sneak in through neglect or abuse or trauma. But I think this question really pushes us to ponder, what is the heart of God really like? Do we believe that he wants us to give and give so that our health is depleted and our most important relationships are broken, strained, are superficial? No, he doesn't. It's a resounding no, right? Does he want us to work at our jobs to the point of exhaustion all the time? Is that his aspiration? It's not. Is that his greatest wish? Of course not. And so how do we turn this around? How do we get better at fighting the good fight? How do we do that? So I think the first thing is that we need a richer definition of salvation and being saved. And I believe part of what this points to is how we have significantly underemphasized the healing aspect of salvation as we think about our ministry and our lives. And this is where I've got to give a shout out to John Mark Comer. He wrote a book called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And in that book, he draws on a number of verses, but there's going to be two that I'll highlight to unpack this. But so the first one is John 10:9, where Jesus says, I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and go in and out and find pasture. Pasture means rest, right? Like that's where you lie down and eat. It's like, I'm into that. But the second one that I'll underscore is from 1 Timothy, where Paul says to watch your life and doctrine closely. That's about taking time to reflect. What are my patterns? What's happening? How am I doing? Am I becoming more of who I'm called to be? Persevere in them, because if you do, you will save both yourself and your hearers. What's so intense about that Greek word save is that it doesn't just mean to save from judgment, but it means to make well, to heal, to restore, to health. So your salvation journey inherently means you're getting healthier as time goes by. Your life is becoming more whole as time goes by. And that can be convicting, right? It's like, really? But the other thing is that, well, actually, as you're journeying along, not only should you be getting healthier and be restored in greater ways, actually, part of how we'll take a look at your discipleship is, are the people around you getting healthier? Are they getting more whole, Are they becoming more alive? And that's a sobering challenge. It's like, really, you meant that? It's not just about a transaction where we can check something off a list. It's like, am I becoming more whole, and are the people around me becoming more whole? Another verse to consider would be John 10:10, right next to it, right? Where it says, the thief only comes to steal and kill and destroy. That sounds accurate, right? He's really, really good at that. He's super good at that. Lying to us, getting us to embrace habits of being that are inherently destructive. But Jesus says, I came that they might have life and have it abundantly. And the Greek word for abundant means superior, extraordinary, surpassing, uncommon, more remarkable, more excellent. It's like, give me some of that. I'd like that. I'd like people to think and come up to me and say, man, you've got a pretty amazing life. You're excellent. You're remarkable, actually. And I think when it comes to the gospel, the place that we're supposed to shine the most is in the depth and health of our relationships. It's like, I hang out with you and your family, I hang out with your kids, and it's the coolest thing. Like, I feel so at peace, or you guys can have conversations that are really healthy, and you can talk about hard things and come out on the other side of it. That, I think, is what is meant to characterize our lives the more that we become like Jesus, that our relationships are getting healthier and healthier. Jesus prayed, I pray that they might be one as we are one, where they experience the greatest joy through the intimacy that they have with each other. Oh boy, time's flying by. I got up 13 minutes late, I'm just saying. So lunch is overrated. We'll be done by 2 o'clock for sure. I'll try to pick up the pace. But so I would say that the heart of our calling is to grow in meaningful intimacy with God and the most important people in your life. As you model growing in wholeness and increasingly engage your vocation from a place of wisdom, grace, and strength. That's what I encourage you to noodle on. Is that true of me? Is that happening for me? If not, then I think your version of the gospel is more limited than you've known. So what are some things we can do to reduce burnout? I'm going to start with kind of the practical, direct, and then go to the indirect long-term. But so, ironically, the first thing is to work much more consistently to embrace the Sabbath, with a much greater emphasis on the rest element. And this is where the book I mentioned, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer, and then there's also a book called The Emotionally Healthy Leader by Peter Scazzero that I highly recommend. Exercise is really important. Exercise helps reduce stress and helps produce the quality of sleep that you experience, both of which tend to reduce burnout. I've got a great illustration, but I got to move on. The next one would be let someone else manage your schedule if possible. And this is where I asked permission from Alan to talk about his experiences. And so, because, imagine being the president of Florida Conference. Sounds like a really hard job, right? There's a bazillion churches, a bazillion schools. Conflict tends to come up on occasion. But so he was pushing himself so hard that he kind of got to the edge of burnout, and he realized, if I'm going to manage my schedule, I actually have to give it to Jasmine. I have to let her be the gatekeeper. And that's been an incredible gift for him, where it's like he can say, well, you need to talk to Jasmine, because it's way easier for her to say no than it is for me. And that's been a critical thing. So if you have that as a possibility, or if you can schedule things ahead of time, like your retreats or Sabbath or days off, you can say, I already have plans for that day, which you do. You legitimately do, right? Next would be proactively schedule your time, like I just mentioned, for rest and renewal. That's putting stuff in your calendar, blocking it off, making it sacred. All right, so what are some indirect steps to reduce burnout? This might seem counterintuitive, but I would say it's to embrace greater vulnerability and meaningful self-disclosure. What are you talking about? Well, I would say admitting our struggles to ourselves, to God, and others is a sign of bravery and courage. I mean that. It's not a sign of weakness or failure. Satan wants us to believe that we are weak or a loser if we can't figure it out on our own. And I think that's a total lie. Paul would say God's grace is made perfect when we move towards our weakness. with God and with others. That's my experience. We were never meant to make it on our own. That's just not how God has designed us. So, individually, what that means is be as honest as you can be with God in your prayers. And this is about moving towards your heart and towards your emotions. I tried that about 3 years ago or so, and I've been really blessed by as I move towards my heart and give words toward it's given the Holy Spirit a lot more room to minister life and freedom to me. Journaling would be kind of an extension of prayer, you might say, where it's like you're simply writing down your thoughts and your feelings and inviting the Lord into those. All right, moving on to interpersonally. This is where we're talking about, pardon me, I'm coming out of a sinus infection and cough, so I'm just recovering a bit. But this is about deepening personal community in a one-on-one context or in a group context, which I would argue is the most powerful catalyst for change. Why would I say that? Well, because when you tell your story, when you're honest with others, they can see things that you can't because you're just too close to it. You've been living with this lie for so long, it seems like a best friend, but someone outside your story can see it and point it out, and they can help you see what you've not seen. And secondly, when someone expresses concern or compassion to you that you very likely don't feel like you deserve because you've lived with a kind of chronic suffering that's not from the Lord for a long time, when they express compassion or concern or affirm, it really blesses your soul and starts to give you a new framework for how can I be kind and compassionate to myself. Okay? And lastly, it provides accountability. Back up here for a sec. Because they can say, well, you said you're going to do this, but you haven't done it, so what's up with that? Help me understand that. All right, in terms of moving deeper interpersonally, the next thing would be a friend that you share with transparently. And I've been really fortunate. I've got a psychologist buddy named Michael. He and I have talked twice a month for an hour a time since 2003. So Michael knows my brokenness, my imperfections like nobody else does. It has nothing to do with my job. I can tell him anything, and there's not going to be any financial ramifications. It's a huge gift. So that's where you think about who could I talk to, maybe from college, that I can be honest with, and there's no ramifications. That's a huge gift. Work with a coach. Alex Schussler is a coach for the conference. He's open to seeing pastors or other leaders. He works with the interns, but he does still have some room. That's a possibility. Or work with a therapist. A therapist, they're particularly trained, especially to help you explore family of origin material and early trauma and the resulting shame that likely goes into, frankly, the greatest difficulty with learning to set limits and value yourself and be proactive about your life. And that's not a quick process, but I can testify from being in the chair and helping people that are in the chair that it leads to freedom that you can't get really any other way. I wish that was different, but it's just not. And let's see, mental health resources. And so this is where Jen in the African. Jen, can you raise your hand for us? Yeah, there's Jen. I've got her last name here. Jen, I forgot it. Stefan, something like that. But so the cool thing is, as you can see on the screen, counseling through Amwell Health, it's free. There's no copay if the practice is in network with Aetna, and I just love. Hopefully this is not a shameless plug, but my practice in network with Aetna, I've got 3 therapists that are really good that have openings. But it's a zero copay. So whether it's my practice or any other practice, like I'm doing fine. This is not about me, believe it or not. But I'd really encourage you, if you are in that camp where there was neglect, abuse, trauma, like it's probably affecting you more than you know. I'm just trying to tell you the truth, right? But there's other options too for in-person. There's out-of-network counseling providers. So there's a lot of options here. And so I think part of why I'm here today is to recommend this. And again, it's like if you don't want to work with someone in my practice, that's totally fine. That's not the point. But it's like find someone that you can share with that can help you out of the cycle. And then there's other mental health resources. There's journeys, daily self-guided coaches. There's coaching. There's financial wellness, there's online fitness classes, there's food smart, nutritional coaching. And then, again, this is Jen's information. Email, phone number, ascendtowholeness.org, and you can talk to her at lunch or sometime during the day because, again, if you come from that kind of a backstory, it's going to be a lot harder than just being able to do something on your own. So to wrap up the challenge, God never designed you to persistently live in or on the edge of burnout. Never, 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 never. He's inviting you to actively embrace your freedom to proactively move from burnout to abundance, particularly in your most important relationships. That's his dream for you. That's something I'm growing and experiencing. I know it's possible. I've seen clients experience it. So that's my prayer for you. Let me wrap us in a word, okay? Lord God, thank you so much for the gift of this day. Thank you for each person here. Thank you for granting them the grace to respond to your grace. And Lord, above all, I pray that you'd help them hear your voice about what I shared, that you would help them follow through on your promptings, and that through that, Lord, they'd live in greater freedom, greater wholeness, and experience life more and more abundantly as a reflection of your goodness and as a way to inspire others. In your name, amen. Thank you very much.